So that the corporate finance and retail function of the banks must be separated, obviously, and trading in exotic financial instruments must be banned in Britain, and the debts acquired in trading them elsewhere should be declared not legally enforceable, and thus they'd have the same status as gambling debts, which indeed is what they are. Another straightforward demand we should be raising is sharing out the work. We've got the longest working hours in Europe, and those working hours are getting longer. We must be demanding that working hours should be getting shorter. That things like parental leave should be being improved, not eroded away. So share out the work. We should be sharing out the work. The next thing is building a low carbon infrastructure. Now the Green New Deal had a lot to say about that, and a lot of it is very worthwhile. But the problem is that it didn't really take into account the way that British industry had been hollowed out. So, for example, there was only one wind generator manufacturer in this country on the Isle of Wight, and they've just shut down. And anyway, they didn't produce windmills for wind generators for sale in this country anyway. So now there is for the big Danish generators, there's now a wait of something like 2 years. It's completely nuts. We've got, for example, what is an offshore engineering industry that could actually within months be retooled to be generating offshore wind generators and wave energy farms. And if one looks through all sections of, if you like, sort of worthwhile productive industry in this country, the fact is that it's eroded away. And what's needed is actually a huge program of reinvestment, and that program of reinvestment is actually can only come from public sources. At the same time, it's impossible to imagine how we could develop a sensible energy conservation program without rationalising. We've got a completely mad energy system with the producers and the distributors divided, and different people again actually charging you money. And clearly the energy generation network and needs to be brought back into public ownership, and I'm pleased to say that again is now Green Party policy. And while there's general agreement that we can't trust the market to deliver or maintain a national railway service, it's clear also that it's pretty clear that it's incapable of developing and maintaining decent water supplies and decent energy transmission. So if our aim is to build a whole new low carbon energy system along with a totally renewed public transport system and a sustainable water supply system and an energy retrofit program for every home in the country, we're going to need nothing less than a new industrial revolution. We need to develop or redevelop the capacity to implement a huge production program, including mini and micro CHP and wave and offshore wind turbine plants and so on and so forth. And that means the direct state investment, because that sort of level of investment isn't going to come from anywhere else. So clearly one of those things, we've got 4.5 million families on waiting lists. In this borough, we're just this side of the road, we're just in Camden. Camden Council is now desperately trying to selling off its street properties. When any council housing, non-estate council house becomes free, it doesn't go to one of the 25,000 families on the waiting list in Camden. It's getting sold, and that's happening all over the country. We need a huge programme of sustainable housing development, and that's again that has to come as public investment for the public good. Equally, if you know, there's one group of society who you can be absolutely sure will generate extra demand if they had extra money, and that's elderly people. And one of the things we should be doing, and as part, not just for justice sake, but in terms for good sound economic sense, we should actually be putting money into a renewed, a decent pension policy, a decent pension scheme for old people, and indeed decent in the same terms, decent benefits for disabled people and people seeking work. At the end of January this year, it was announced that in the previous 4 weeks, the deficit in occupational pension funds had increased by 40%. The pension funds, the pension fund black hole is massive, and it's you have things like, for example, the post office saying, well, we'll have to we have to sell off the post office because we've got this problem of a huge deficit in the pension fund, and this deficit wasn't actually caused by accident. It was caused as a result of the post office, at the behest of the Treasury, taking a 17-year holiday on. Didn't put any money into the scheme for 17 years, and now they're saying, oh gosh, we haven't got enough money in the system. Well, what a surprise that is. So one of the things that we have to do, if there's rather than be underwriting and propping up failed financial institutions, we should actually be propping up people's pensions, and actually the government should be underwriting the investment occupational pension schemes effectively. I mean that, not to put too fine a point on it, that means effectively nationalising them as a first step, and moving on towards a new universal SERPS, state earnings related pension scheme, which would could over a period of time incorporate existing state and private occupational pensions. Now the last section in here is called funding equality, because the fact is that what this is advocating is actually not the sort of 57 billion, between 57 and 70 billion that the Green New Deal is urging of additional government, of additional state spending, but probably something like 110 billion. So the question is, how do you pay for that? Well, of course, it's amazing that I came across this. The extraordinary thing is that now there's a huge public support for the idea that the prosperous should pay their fair share.